Okay, are we on? Are we live? Excellent, there we go. Good afternoon. My name is Wayne Beaton. I'm with the Eclipse Foundation. My official title is Director of Open Source Projects, which means that my job is to help our various open source projects at Eclipse, at the Eclipse Foundation, be successful. We actually don't have a lot of time, so I'm going to go fairly quickly. Just thought I'd start off by explaining exactly how things are done at Eclipse. When I say exactly, I mean at a very high level, of course. Most people in this room have likely downloaded some Eclipse-based IDE. Can I actually safely assume, show of hands, who here actually uses Eclipse? As an aside, who in the room actually has an Eclipse Foundation account that they use for Bugzilla? I find it very, very promising that so many of you have never encountered a bug with Eclipse. So anyway, you've probably downloaded an Eclipse-based IDE, and an Eclipse-based IDE is composed of a whole bunch of different things. Something that most people don't know, I need to stay in the light, don't I? Something that most people don't know about Eclipse is the Eclipse Foundation actually employs none of the developers who do the work on Eclipse. We are a true, pure, open source project. By open, we mean we work transparently. The code is available to the community to do with as they choose, but also we are open in the sense that if you show up to Eclipse and say, hey, I want to participate, you can participate by the same set of rules as everybody else. You don't have to be, in fact, actually, if you're an employee of the Eclipse Foundation, you really aren't supposed to be doing a lot of contribution to projects. I think Benjamin and I both kind of get away with it without, our bosses just don't pay attention. But yeah, so we actually do contribute to these projects. But again, the developers that do all the work on Eclipse actually come from other places. So companies and individuals come forward and they will contribute their time and their energy and their resources to the projects to get the work done. The challenge for me then, as a director of open source projects, basically I'm kind of responsible for making sure all these pieces come together. I have no power in the process. I have no developers that I can say, hey, this feature is important, go implement it. We thought Gradle was important. I have no resources to say, go implement Gradle. Fortunately, the good people at Gradleware came forward and said, hey, we really, really think it'd be great if Eclipse supported Gradle better. So they've contributed a whole bunch of new code that's going to, in the form of what we call the build ship project, that's going to provide that functionality. Right? So this is kind of the way things, this is the way things work at Eclipse. We provide a place for the community to come together and build the software that everyone knows and loves. So what you're seeing here in this diagram is in the middle, in this big box, I'm showing what's in the Eclipse IDE for Java developers. The Git integration that we all know and love comes from the eGit project and the JGit project. If you're doing XML editing, that comes from the Web Tools project. You have this recommendation engine, which I'll talk about in a minute. Code recommenders. The M2E project provides the Maven integration. All of these projects work together to produce these IDEs that you come to our website. You go to eclipse.org/downloads and download. So Eclipse, again, I think we've probably all heard about plugins. Eclipse is really just this composition of plugins that come from lots of different sources. And of course, we provide a lot of them. But if you go to the Eclipse marketplace, you'll find a source of a great number of other plugins provided by lots of wonderful people in the community. Eclipse is a Java development tool by virtue of having code provided to us by the Java Development Tools project. And of course it has eGit support because we have those plugins there too. If you want to make the Java IDE or an Eclipse-based Java IDE also be a C and C++ IDE, add the CDT to it. So we can make, Eclipse is sort of infinitely expandable, infinitely redefinable in terms of what it is and what it provides based on the set of plugins that you add to it. Our simultaneous release was created to solve a problem. When we have all of these different projects doing the development differently or separately, as in their own little development teams, sometimes getting them to work to coordinate together is a challenge. Certainly, before we started doing this simultaneous release, we had projects releasing on different schedules, which meant that if you wanted to do Java development and have support for web development, and then modeling development. Sometimes you had to wait 3, 4, 5 months for different projects to release on different schedules. With the simultaneous release, we brought everything together to aggregate the build so you could get everything that you want in one place. We made a way for the project teams to all communicate. They actually do this a regular process of doing integrations of all of the different project works together over a year-long period. We have all these different milestone builds. I often get asked in the final weeks, beginning of June, as we're putting the last bit of the simultaneous release together, is it a time of panic? And it's actually relatively dull. By the time we get to that last build at Eclipse to produce what will this year be called Mars, we've done it about 7, 11, we've done it nine times. This is our 10th time putting everything together. We've been practicing it for so long, we've already found most of the problems. Generally at the end, we're not having too much trouble. Actually, it's weird. Typically, we have trouble with the 5th milestone. There's almost always, if you look back historically anyway, there's almost always a milestone 5A. And part of it is it's a lot of us work in Canada, eh? Yeah, the ones that go to Canada, the people who go to Canada get the joke. Okay, never mind, moving on. So yeah, it's usually around milestone 5 that we actually have most of the problems. We sort those out, and by the time we produce bits that people consume, we've done it a whole bunch of times. So we are actually on our 10th formal simultaneous release. Every year we release in June. Every year we bring together a whole bunch of different projects. This year I have 80 different projects participating in the simultaneous release. Most of them are producing things that you generally will care about. Most of them are IDE sorts of things. I've mentioned eGit, I've mentioned the Java development tools, the C and C++ development tools. We also have a lot of different modeling projects producing things. We have a lot of different frameworks, the Scout framework for building applications, the RAP framework for building web-based applications using OSGI technology. Lots and lots of different technologies are coming out together. And again, the intent here is that these projects coordinate their development activities, their release schedule, their communication. So this year, we have 80. I'm actually anticipating an 81st project. It's a little bit late for us to be adding a project, but we think it's important. So that number, file number will probably be 81. We're still sort of wrestling with that. And it's an impressive number of lines of code that go into each of these releases. Now, when I say 61 million lines of code last year, again, most of that is in the IDE, but not all of it. So there's lots of, like I said, lots of different projects at Eclipse doing lots of different sorts of things. In Luna, we introduced some stuff that, quite frankly, baffled me how well it was received. I'm dumbfounded by how happy everybody was that we turned line numbers on by default. We got so much good press and good feelings because of this option that you can very easily toggle yourself was turned on by default. We also got a great deal of goodwill because of the dark theme, which works really well on Windows. Linux users are not quite so excited. With Luna, that's improving. We're continuing to improve the theming ability within Eclipse. Again, things like being able to hide the quick access bar. Again, people love that stuff, and I'm not quite sure why. But anyway, the big thing, Java 8 support. Of course, we have full Lambda support, content assist, and a lot of cleanup. In Mars, the problems with that we had in Luna are being addressed, and lots and lots of improvements in the Java 8 support. The Java Development Tools team is also working on Java 9 things right now. I don't think we'll get any of that into the Mars release, primarily because of just the way that it's licensed. You can't. There's certain things you can't do in certain ways with that code. So until Java 9 is fully baked, I'm not sure that we will be including it in the release. One of the things that I'm pretty excited about in Mars is this new installer technology. After 10 years of doing simultaneous releases and 15 years of Eclipse being open source, we've decided to finally put some energy into installer technology. And of course, when I say we, I mean somebody in the community decided that this was important and actually put the effort into doing this. What we wound up with is a new project at Eclipse called Oomph, which some people find amusing. But anyway, the Oomph project, we're not done with the branding. We will actually call it an Eclipse installer because Oomph installer makes no sense. But the idea is here you download the installer, and instead of picking a package on a web browser, and you can actually select the package you want in the installer. And what it does is it actually makes better use of mirrors and things, so it could actually wind up pulling in all the downloads a lot faster. It assembles all the different plugins together on your workstation and creates your Eclipse instance. Another thing that it does, which again, novel after 15 years of doing this, it actually checks to see if you have a JRE installed, and if you don't, it points you in the right direction. Unfortunately, due to licensing restrictions, we actually can't distribute the JRE. That's a problem that we've had for a little while. One of the things that this does that's actually pretty cool, I'm just going to flip to the next slide here. Installing Eclipse is one thing. Frankly, I'm not sure that that's that big a deal. Downloading a zip file and unzipping, it's not that hard. Why do we care? There's actually an advanced mode in this installer that lets you pick a different, pick a version of Eclipse that you want to install. It allows you to pick a version. You can say, hey, I want the Mars version, I want the Luna version. I don't think we go any further back than that, but you can pick different versions of Eclipse if you would like. You can tell it which JVM you want to use that you have installed. It will allow you to pick one. The other thing it introduces is this bundle pool. The idea of the bundle pool is Eclipse is full of all these plugins. They're also called bundles. And if you install Eclipse multiple times, today if you download multiple copies of Eclipse, you're going to have multiple copies of all the same code. Instead of doing that, what we do with this installer is we create a bundle pool. So if you install Eclipse and then you install it again, it says, well, Eclipse goes, well, wait a minute, we've already downloaded all of this stuff. I don't need to go download it again. I've got it in the pool, and I'll just use what I have there. So you can actually install multiple instances of Eclipse, and the footprint is very small for each subsequent instance because they're sharing this common bundle pool. That in itself is pretty interesting. You'll see this. There's going to be this .p2 directory in your user folder. It also makes so again when you're it makes it really easy to install a new version of Eclipse. You just run the installer, and it pulls all the stuff that's already downloaded. It just pulls out of the pool. It'll go and get the things that it doesn't have downloaded and add them to the pool. I'm finding with this, my Eclipse installations are far more transient now. I build them as I need them and then just delete them. Now, even cooler with this installer is in the advanced version, you can actually go and set up your development environment. So I have Eclipse, and it usually starts up with an empty workspace. I can tell this installer, once you build your Eclipse, I want you to put into the workspace everything that I need to have in order to do work for the platform projects. So I want to do like Eclipse Runtime or Eclipse UI or any other. We have lots and lots of different Eclipse projects here. So you can actually, as part of the install process, say, when you build this Eclipse, populate the workspace with the Git repos or references to the Garrett repos that contain all of the code for a certain project. It will also build things like the targets which probably makes no sense to use to those of you that are doing plain old Java development. It'll set up the task list in Mylan from your Bugzilla, your Track, your Jira instance. It'll completely configure your entire working environment. I'm at a point now where I can set up my workstation to debug and test and work on an Eclipse project in about as much time as it takes me to clone the Git repo, which is pretty cool. Now, Where this gets interesting is right now with this particular version, we have a means of realizing our packages that we define using this technology and environments for editing our projects. But this technology is completely usable by other people. So with a little bit of work, you can actually set up a script, a description of your corporate environment. I need, for a new developer showing up on my team, I need Eclipse to have these 5 Git repos, and I need to have these things on the class path, and I need to have this information pulled out of my JRE instance. And the idea is here you can get your developers to have their entire work environment set up in a matter of minutes, rather than, I think in some cases, many people spend hours and days getting a development environment set up. So again, with some work, you can build this description. We're working on a way of just doing that automatically. Somebody sets up their environment, pulls in all the plugins they need, pulls in all the code that they need, hooks to their Jira, their Track, their Bugzilla, whatever, and then says, make this something I can share with people. Right? And then, so that'll be hopefully, well, certainly it'll be in the next release. We're hoping we can get that out earlier than that, but we're working on it. Marketplace client with Mars is going to be a little bit smarter. If you use the Marketplace client today to add plugins to Eclipse, it's not all that smart. It just says, hey, here's a whole bunch of plugins that match this text description you typed in. The new version that comes out with Mars will actually make sure that whatever it sends back to you as things that you might want to install can actually be installed into your environment. I know, novel. Anyway, so that's a big change. We're actually also adding another Eclipse Projects Marketplace, which will make it easier to identify Eclipse Project created code and add official Eclipse Project software to your Eclipse installation. Another feature that we've added this time around is preferences sharing. Preferences can be shared on your workstation. So you can designate certain preferences as being things that you want to have in all of the different Eclipse instances you have on your workstation. So many of us have multiple different workspaces, and configuring the preferences on each of them can be painful. We can pick some subset of those preferences and say, make them available everywhere. We're working on a version now where you can actually share that across teams as well. So you can say, you set up your preferences and I can share them with a colleague. And again, it's some subset of the preferences that you choose. We've added Gradle support. This again comes nice from the good people at Gradle. This is I guess our version 1. This is part of produced by the BuildShip project, and I've put the URL here, http://eclipse.org/buildship. If you're interested in Gradle's work, I would love for you to go to that website, navigate to the downloads page, get the URL for the update site, install it into your Eclipse Mars milestone build, and then email me at wayne@eclipse.org and tell me what you think of it. We want to try and battle test this a little bit more before we roll it out in June. It allows you to do things like import a Gradle script, and it will build an Eclipse project or projects based on the contents of your Gradle build script. It'll give you a breakdown of the tasks in your script and give you a means of running each of those tasks. It has some basic editor support for your build scripts. Again, it's version 1, so we're expecting some great improvements over the next months and years. But it's definitely very functional for those of you who are using Gradle. Actually, out of curiosity, who is using Gradle? Great. Who's using Maven? Okay, interesting. At Java 1, the room was split about 50-50 on that. Anyway, I'd be curious if you could, afterwards, maybe if you could tell me if you've looked at Gradle and think it's horrible. I'd love to hear that. Or if there's plans to use Gradle, I'd be just curious to understand Gradle plans if you have a minute. We've added some error monitoring in the form of an error reporter. So when problems occur in the Eclipse IDE, it really helps for us to know about them. And as at my informal poll at the beginning of this session, I think about 4 of you have Bugzilla accounts and 2 of you work for the Eclipse Foundation. So clearly you're not reporting bugs as you encounter them. So this error reporter will do that for you. You can do it completely anonymously. It will anonymize any data that might potentially identify you. But it then sends it to our development teams and gives them a fighting chance of solving the problem. We've actually had great success with this already, just with the milestone builds. We've identified a lot of little annoying bugs and a lot of some significant ones, and have had an opportunity to address them. Also, similar to this and related to this, we've added a UI responsiveness monitor. If the UI freezes up for a certain period of time, and you can actually specify what that is. In this case, I've got my environment to. If it takes more than 3 seconds to do anything, it generates an error which will be reported through the error reporter. So that gives our platform development team a chance to understand why something's maybe not being responsive. Very often, unfortunately, very often the problem is that some third-party plugin is misbehaving. Too many developers like to do things in the UI thread. Anyway, that's something that once we know about it, we can actually take steps to mitigate the problem and fix it. And again, we've had a great deal of success with this already through the milestone builds for Mars. Code recommenders. We're turning code recommenders on by default. Enough fooling around with this. When you do content assist, hit control space, it gives you everything under the sun to offer as a code completion. With code recommenders, what they do is they base on the context you're in. In this case here, I've created a text. The next thing that most people do after they create a text is set the layout data. So 83% of the time, that's what you want to do. 48% of the time, what you want to do is set the text. So now, as you build this, the list of recommendations will change. What we've done is the Code Recommenders project has gone out and reviewed as much code as they can find. They've looked through GitHub and SourceForge and all of the different forges out there, and they've found out how people use code. And based on that, they've figured out what the patterns are. When you do this, the next thing you do is that. The next thing you do is that. The next thing you do is that. The Content Assist now will keep that in mind. So based on what other people have done, after you make a J-frame, the next thing you're going to do is something else. And again, the list will be different for a J-frame. Very cool technology. There's also an opportunity for you to participate in it and contribute your own examples to them. I'll invite you to that. You can discover that as part of your use of this technology. We have some JavaFX support in the form of from the EFX Eclipse project. So we have the ability actually to run Eclipse-based projects on JavaFX. The SDK itself doesn't actually, or the IDEs don't run on it yet, but we actually have some ability to run stuff on JavaFX. We have, of course, ability to edit JavaFX applications and do that kind of work within the IDE too. So this is pretty cool. If you've ever heard of Eclipse Rich Client Platform, you can deploy Rich Client Platform applications on JavaFX. There's a Markdown Editor. Actually, this isn't new. I just discovered it recently. There's actually, in fact, a whole bunch of different wiki formats are supported by this editor. So if you have a .md file in Eclipse, double-click on it. An editor that's aware of how Markdown works. Lots of Java compiler improvements, new and improved formatter. We have an entirely new Java formatter, which offers a lot more customizability, a lot more robust. We're working on getting GTK3 support in place. That's looking really good. Unfortunately, with 3.1.0, they wrecked a whole bunch of stuff on us. So we're working with that team and getting that done. We've reworked how we represent Eclipse on the Mac, so it's more of a natural layout. This will actually make it impossible to update from milestone 5 to milestone 6. You have to completely get a whole new copy of it. Lots of different Maven improvements, 80 different fixes in this latest release of Maven. Lots and lots of stability and performance improvements thanks to the error reporting. The other thing, and I just sort of added this to the list, the and more Android development tools. We've taken ownership of the ADT that Google had previously been working on, and we are working hard to bring that into an Eclipse project. At this point, we're kind of in a stabilization effort, kind of fixing some of the existing problems. Once we have that in, they're going to release this during the Mars timeframe. We'll start thinking about what we're going to do in terms of improving that experience and making it competitive. So I'm going to finish off my section, hand over to Benjamin in a second. I just want to invite all of you to, if you are so inclined or if you have the time, please consider contributing to Eclipse with this new Oomph installer. It's easier than it has been ever before. We have fame, adventure, excitement. I know everyone wants those kinds of things. One thing that we have actually going on right now to encourage a contribution, again, if you're interested in contributing, this would be great. We have prizes. We're giving out Google tablets, graciously donated to us from the good people at Google, to people who contribute great fixes to Eclipse for Mars. If you're curious about this, if you're inclined to contribute to our open source projects, please come see me afterwards or over at the Eclipse booth in the exhibit